Perspectives, Finding Common Ground, a podcast series that brings together a panel of thought leader perspectives as a forum to socialize and problem solve education technology issues with the goal to ultimately find common ground.
Hello, everyone. My name is Patrick Devaney, and I'm pleased to welcome you today to this episode of Perspectives, Finding Common Ground. Today, we're going to be talking about making Edtech adoptions more sustainable with the use of professional development. I have three fantastic guests with me here today. And with that, I'm going to go around the horn and let them all introduce themselves and share a little bit about their interest in this topic. I guess we'll start with Greg Bagby, if I could, please. Greg?
Sure. Greg Bagby, Coordinator of Instructional Technology in Hamilton County Schools, Chattanooga, Tennessee. And yes, I've been doing this gig for a little while, pre-pandemic, yay. But when I think of adoption and then the whole idea of PD, I think it has to be something that not only is it something useful for the teachers, but the teachers have to believe that the folks in charge believe in it. So when they adopt something, it's not just, hey, take this and go. As a school principal, I would always bring tools in, show them how to use the tools, because I wanted to make sure that I could use them properly before releasing them. So there's my 20 seconds on adoption of tools and PD.
Fantastic. Well, welcome, Greg. I'm looking forward to more conversation here. I guess next we'll go to Trudy Bender. Welcome.
Great. Yeah. So I am a music teacher turned school psychologist turned district administrator. My specialty is behavior and behavior intervention. So I've done a lot of work in that area, and there are so many technology tools that can support that work. And so one of my primary responsibilities was helping implement technology to support that work in our district, along with all the professional development, everything else that goes together with that. And now I work for Branching Minds. I am their MTSS content manager. And one of our values is that it takes a lot more than a technology platform. It really does take a partner and takes that professional development to get full implementation. So I care a lot about this topic.
Fantastic. Welcome, Trudy. We're looking forward to hearing more. And then finally, last but not least, is Jeff McCoy.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeff McCoy. I'm the Associate Superintendent for Academics here in Greenville County Schools, South Carolina. I had, similar to Trudy, I was a classroom teacher and was good with technology. And so the district asked me to come and ultimately lead their instructional technology department and some of the technical services side, which I did for many years before moving over to the curriculum instructional side full time. So my unique background on this topic really gives me a lot of perspective about nowadays how integrated technology is into academics and how vital and critical it is to our students' success. So it's critical that implementations go well because it does impact the classroom and it does impact academics for students.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to you all again. And I think I'd like to start with kind of a question around the overall implementation of an EdTech product in an educational institution. And there are several key factors that are critical there. I think professional development will turn out to be one of them. But if you could each, from your perspective, kind of highlight the areas that we need to address when implementing an EdTech product to make it smooth and sustainable. And maybe we'll start with you, Jeff, this time.
So I think, as you said, professional development probably is number one. That is always key. I think also, though, relevance. For me, when I'm looking at implementing a product, getting the teachers buy-in, getting the principals buy-in for that product district-wide, one of the things we've done over the last 4 years, I guess, with our instructional technology department is really make sure that when we're teaching our teachers how to use the technology, it's not just on how to use the technology. It's actually integrating that technology and how do you use it for core academics? How do I use this? If you're using some sort of polling system, how do we design lessons around that polling system? Or how do we design lessons around, whatever software that we might be using to aid classroom instruction? So not teaching technology to our teachers and professional development in isolation, but rather actually showing them how to use it in the classroom. So when they go back the very next day, they can hopefully integrate and start using it right away to enhance learning and teaching.
I would like to echo what Jeff said. One of the things that I try to do with any type of technology training is make sure that it's something that the students or the teachers can implement the next day. You want the teachers to already be able to get inside and do what they want to do. Because if it's a product that, well, you're going to have to learn a little bit more, and we're going to have to keep coming back before you can actually implement this to the full effect, then the teachers will just put it aside and not think about it. But having that ability to uh, adopt and go in and, as Jeff was talking about, not only talk with the administrators about implementation, but the teachers that are going to be using the tools. Make sure you have their buy-in as well, so that it would be a successful transition to whatever that tool may be.
Yeah, buy-in came up and what both of you said, it's such a critical part of this. And something that I found is that if you really want good buy-in, it starts even before you've adopted that platform, going all the way back to the selection process. Kind of like who cares the most about a candidate? The people on the search committee, right? So making sure that you include some voices of principals and teachers and the folks that are really going to be in charge of this, making sure that they're a part of the selection process as well. So that's something that was helpful to me.
And I like that, Trudy. I think I love that, and I think too something that's worked well, and along that same vein, if you will, it's having even teachers to deliver the professional development on the software when possible. Always vendor partners are amazing and coming in and teaching, but a lot of times in a large district like ours, we like our vendor partners to come in, train a group of teachers or administrators, and then actually let them go out and deliver the content and deliver the professional development, which just provides so much more, I think sometimes reputation to the process, because teachers like listening to teachers and they like listening to each other, and the benefits of that.
And one last thing, we always ask, well, I say always, for the most part, we try to ask every time, just like Jeff, for a train the trainer model. When we get companies saying, hey, we'll do this training and that training, we're like, okay, but we'd rather you train the folks in districts so that we can train. And I think, like you said, I think it makes a difference.
So I've heard a couple of things. I've heard inclusion. I've heard user-centric kind of training. How about the goals and clear expectations about the training? And I clearly heard there's some value in having the companies that create the product included, but there's got to be some more dynamics to this. It's not just get them in there and get them together. How else would you kind of approach that?
Well, I think you need a clear and very committed district contact point who's going to be overseeing all of that, right? If you don't have a person, not just a team, but a person who's like, this is my thing and I want to make sure that it's happening. I think you have great communication between the vendor and the district to help coordinate all of that. And that's one thing that I've found to be helpful. And I think too that the idea of something that's going to be very practical immediately for teachers, sometimes you're not going to know that until you do a pilot. So I'm sure we're going to talk about pilots a little bit here, but having a great pilot with a well-respected, well-regarded group of folks who then are going to be able to provide good feedback is really helpful too.
Yeah, and I think along those lines too, Trudy, I think looking at creating even some exemplars, we try to do that with pilots particularly as well, that, we'll create those master teachers in the classrooms. And so the other teachers who may be struggling a little bit to see the implementation or do it to a high degree can go visit those classrooms. And again, it just kind of elevates the experience for those teachers, I think, seeing their colleagues do it well and see their colleagues in the classroom and some strategies that they're doing. So creating those learning labs for any large scale implementation is amazing coaching opportunity for teachers.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, if you see the person down the hall doing it, you can't say it's impossible, right?
Right.
So it gives a lot of reality and credibility to whatever you're doing. Yeah.
How about the modality here? I've heard a lot of talk about what appears to be primarily in-person training. Is there, how else can you deliver that, especially through the pandemic? I'm sure we've all had some lessons that we've learned.
Well, I'll jump in. Of course, much like we're doing this podcast, there's ability to do conferences online. But I do like the idea of first having hands-on, body in front of body, teachers delivering the content or whomever delivering the content, and then always have follow-up. Never, 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 ever just get a product, push it out, say, here you go. Here's our training. You're on your own. I actually have a session tomorrow morning where I'm doing a Zoom, actually a Teams meeting over something that we've implemented. But I say, hey, we're going to follow up because I'm not going to ever just give this stuff to the teachers and say, hey, you're on your own. Yes, we had a great training, but I want to make sure that they're still implementing this at a, well, how we want them to implement it. And it's something that's usable in their classroom. Since we're paying lots of money for these tools, we want to make sure that first they can actually use them to the greatest, and we're getting our return on investment because they are using them and the students are growing from what they're doing with those tools.
So I really, I think the pandemic taught us a lot. I think coming out of that pandemic, I think, we've really tried to utilize formats based on what we're trying to do, what the purpose is. If we are delivering information, that can really just be not as much interactive. That's a great opportunity, especially in a large district. So people aren't driving in to deliver that via Zoom or via, WebEx or whatever you're using. But to Greg's point, we have a lot of generations of teachers. We have the TikTok generation who just wants to show me the 2-minute video clip and I can, master it in 2 minutes. You've got the teacher generations who are still, even though they went through a pandemic, kind of like, I still want, I still need a little help with technology. I like somebody live to be there with me and help me. And so, we try to accommodate, if you will, all of that piece. And so after that first initial training, I do find that those short clips and technologies that some vendors will supply or that we can supply, it's a great reinforcement for teachers when they're just like, I can't remember how to do that thing, to jump on YouTube or wherever they're housed and watch that short video clip or jump on there. And then there's, like I said, the TikTok generation of teachers are all about, I can learn the entire software just by watching the TikTok videos. So, trying to accommodate the whole generational differences I think we have with our teachers today.
Yeah, it's really true. And through the pandemic, we did learn that there are some things we can do asynchronously. There are some things we can do online that maybe we wouldn't have thought of before that will work really well. But I think there's just no substitute for sitting face to face. And for me, I so agree with what you said, Greg, that you can't just deliver some PD and then think it's going to go for it. We know it's not true, right? We'll train in August, you check back in December, and nothing has happened. And that's the way we all are. Like, if there aren't clear deadlines, if there isn't some way of stepping this out in day-to-day life, it's very unlikely that it's going to happen. So creating opportunities, and that can be a great way of extending that learning, right? So if you have something in person, then you can extend it online or vice versa, right? So I think one of the most effective ways to help with any kind of tech adoption is that you sit down in the real space where the decisions are happening and they're using the tech. So you sit with that PLC, you use your own data, you use your own students, not a demo, not, some kind of fake data that you're using just to practice, but work on your own students and your own data, see how it works out in real practice. And of course, it takes lots of people to do that who are well trained, which is where your master teachers come in and having that kind of trainer of trainer models within the district. So it can be a little more fluid than it used to be, which is a great thing.
So how do you do that over time? It sounds like monitoring, measuring. There's got to be a whole lot of different touches over time. I heard a couple of things come up, but there should be some more. Um, you know, the opportunity to sit with them in their environment. Is it a monitoring, much like an observation, or is it something more sophisticated or different? Is the asynchronous stuff built into the product, or is it a knowledge base that they go search? And how do you know if they're using it?
Yeah, so I'll say that, we monitor every tool's a little different in purpose, obviously. There's some tools are just our tech tools. They provide polls and different things on that. So you may just be looking at usage. How much are the teachers using it? Is it a good return on investment? I think for a lot of our instructional tools, we're looking at doing usually a little bit more in-depth research on that over time to figure out is it translating into increased academic achievement for our students. I think it is important, though, Patrick, to your point. I think it's important to set that up front with the vendor, the goals, and to have those regular check-ins. I found that to be he's kind of not so there's no misunderstanding up front that we're not just talking about usage that you can give me at the end of the year and say, look how much usage there was. But if I tie academic goals to that, I want to see the academic goals. I can quite frankly monitor usage through ClassLink, so I don't necessarily need a vendor to tell me that. What I want to see is that you actually can show me the goals, and are we meeting the goals we established up front from our very first partner meeting at the beginning of the year?
Well, I would say I love a good rubric. You've got to have something flipped out where people know is this early adoption? Is this kind of middle level adoption? Are we fully adopted? Like, what are those markers along the way that are going to let us know if we're actually achieving something? Because the reality is you can't fix everything at once. And there are often multiple different initiatives going on all at the same time. You absolutely have to prioritize. And so having a rubric that really steps things out allows you to say, okay, we're only, we're not implemented at all in this area. We've got a little bit of movement in this area. What are we going to prioritize? And how can we just take that very next tiny step and then take the step after that? And without a clear rubric of what that looks like, I think it's hard to do. So I think having that rubric and then having not just people self-assess, as important as that is, self-assessment is super important, but also having an outside kind of more a little bit of accountability from the district level is something that we provide, right? And not as a gotcha, but as a where do you need more support? Maybe you need some additional professional development. Maybe you need me to come and sit with your PLCs all day, whatever it might be. I think it helps provide some guardrails for that implementation process.
And Jeff mentioned the fact that yes, we can pull up analytics in ClassLink and see the usage, and we don't want companies to tell us no because we have assets. But I still do usage reports for the teaching and learning team, so they'll know. Well, this school they're not doing well in this and this and this. So it's they're not even using the products that we've purchased for them, and that may be a possibility as to why this is happening. And just having access to those analytics and sharing them with those principals or even some of the teachers saying, hey, these are some of the things that are going on in this school and these are the scores and this is how it correlates. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if it's causal. I just know it's happening. But perhaps if we had the same usage at your school on these products, maybe, just maybe, your scores will be improved as well. So just having that also helps me.
Yeah, and I'll say too, Greg, I think that's a great point. That a lot of times my vendors that were doing heavy implementation, they'll send me monthly reports, and tied to academics a lot of times. And that is helpful. I forget. I can log into ClassLink and see if my administrators can, but we get busy. We forget to do that. And so it's a great nudge from our vendor partners to be able to say, hey, just want you to see usage. So I can look down there and realize, to your point, and why is this school not using, they're low in test scores and they're not using the software products we put out there for them. Just so again, we can go do a little bit of discovery and figure out why is it that there's no buy-in, or why is it that we're not using the product that we know already works.
I'm not a teacher, never been a teacher, but I would have to think that teachers have an opinion about these products. How important is it, and how do you handle a feedback loop, an opportunity for them to provide their thoughts and suggestions in their use and the skills that are required to use them?
I think it's very important to understand how they feel about the products and how they're using them. And a lot of times I've found, not necessarily, I hate to say this, there are times where administrators don't remind the teachers, oh, yeah, we have these products to do these things. We've been doing it this way for the years. And okay, we got something new, but we're just going to still do it this way. And I've seen where administrators have not promoted, so to speak, a tool that would help them. And it's one of those things that because of this lack of promotion, the feedback that we get, like, I guess to Jeff's point, this is why they're not using the tool, because it's not something that it's even on the admin's radar, because they're doing things how they've always done it. And yeah, I know central office does this, but they don't actually understand what goes on in the classroom, or we're on the ground floor. We have boots on the ground. So we're just going to keep doing this as we're doing it. I shouldn't say it like that, but I know that's the case in some of the schools that I get to work with.
I think that's always been a bit of a perspective there, Greg. Yeah, for sure. One of the things sometimes is I think going back to Simon and Sinek's work about the why, I think it's very critical sometimes. And when I buy something for across the district, there's never going to be 100% buy-in. I don't care how hard you work. I don't care how, somebody's always going to have an opinion about something else. And I think for sometimes it's going into the schools, and while teachers may want to use something because they just like it better, is really bringing that conversation around to what is best for students. And best for students is looking at a product that we know is research-based. And sometimes that we say, X amount of time spent on the product yields X amount of time. And a lot of products we use, we have our own research that we've done, so we know they work. And sometimes instead of teachers going off and going to find something they found online that a friend liked and they just find it easy to use, sometimes it's drawing that conversation back to, well, let's look what's actually best for kids. If they're going to spend X amount of time a week on this product, it has to yield results. And we don't have 45 minutes or an hour a week to waste on instruction. We need to make sure what we're doing works and it's not a waste of the student's time.
Yeah, and I think if you approach teachers with a compassionate outlook, right? I mean, what we're asking our teachers
Yes.
to do is just so huge. We've all been in the classroom. If we can go back and remember what that's like and have a little compassion about what they're facing and try to meet them where they are. I remember with an Edtech adoption that we were doing in my district, we did a day in the life of I think it was a second grade teacher, and we put on it took us more than one slide, all of the different platforms they were expected to have login access for and to be using on a regular basis. It was totally overwhelming. And we had not done a good job of aligning what we were asking our teachers to do. And so recognizing the challenges they face, but then saying, look, here's why. And just always keeping that teacher experience in mind is really important. I can remember in that same conversation, one of the teachers or one of the principals saying, we were making a decision about what platform to adopt. I like this one for principals because it provides a certain level of overall data that I can see, but it's not very user friendly for teachers. I think we should go with what's user friendly for teachers and trying to keep their experience in mind because it is really challenging.
Well, Trudy, I'm going to have to steal that day in the life thing. Well, no, because years ago when I was a principal, I did something crazy and strapped a GoPro to a kid and got her parents' permission. And we had classes. She switched classes. We had, I can't even think of the word now, but the kids, fifth graders, she went from class to class for different things. And I took the video back and we analyzed it. And then I did the same thing with the music teacher who gets a bunch of kids in during the day. Oh, I was also a music teacher. And just the whole idea, you learn so much from watching what the kids go through or the teacher goes through in that sense. But I'd never thought of, he was the music teacher and he did lots of music stuff, but never thought like a third grade teacher, the tools that she has to use, how she has to switch it up. I know they have Chromebooks in some classes, they have iPads in others, and we have all these different tools. You got to get inside a ClassLink to make sure you get the right things and do. It's just, it can be overwhelming. And I'm just so you know, I'm stealing that. I'm using that to make my district better. Thank you.
Well, I'm wishing I had a kid to strap a GoPro to. I love that idea, right? That's so fun. And what a great way to just get a little empathy go. A little empathy can go a long way. That doesn't mean that we have to lower our standards. We're still going to do what's best for kids, but a little empathy can go a long way.
Clearly there's kind of some best practices around this, and it sounds, we'll summarize them in a little bit. But one of the things that comes to mind is how does something new, because very often the training or the focus is on a product when it's new, how is that impacted by what already exists? And how do you get that training going? Wow, we just went through all this training and now you've decided that there's a better product and we should be using this instead. Or we're going to bring in something new and we're still going to do something that has been here in the past. Does that present a challenge, or does anybody have any examples of how you've combated that?
Well, I think
No, not a challenge.
Not at all. It's not a challenge. I think in our district, because we are so large, it's really, unless a product for some reason is not working, it's very difficult to shift off of it. As long as we're getting results, we don't shift just because the newest shiny thing walked by. And a lot of times, actually, if we do switch, it bubbles up from teachers. A lot of times, whether they've seen it somewhere and say, hey, can we take a look at this instead? I think it might be better than what we're using now. And that's really the best way for that to happen is organically through teachers to bubble up versus district level saying, we use this for 3 years, throw it out, we're not going to use it anymore. Now, if it's not working and we know the results aren't there, then absolutely be educational malpractice not to find something else. Because again, we can't have our kids spending time on products that just absolutely don't yield academic results on academic software. But I think a lot of stuff I can give examples of in the past that we have changed over actually bubbled up from our teachers to say, hey, I think this is time to change this. Is there a way to do that? And you put that committee together, that teacher committee together, and then how you communicate that out is basically it bubbled up from teachers, and teachers wanted a different experience for their students. And like Trudy or Greg said, I can't remember which one, a lot of times we just pilot. We'll pilot first. So we're not going to change all 80,000 of our students over to something different. We pilot in a few classrooms. If we get better results, then we start communicating that why and how it started.
Well, Jeff, one of the things that I've seen is there are a lot of your TikTok teachers that are bringing in tools and
And that's
suggestions
true.
saying, hey, we should do this. I've seen this on
Yeah.
TikTok and it looks like it works and it worked in our classroom. And there's just so many tools
Yes.
that they bring in and that folks share on TikTok. Good for them. It's just, yeah, I understand. And I think schools are going to have to find better ways of, well, just making sure teachers understand we can't just adopt it just because you want it immediately. And it works for you in your classroom. That's great. But have you looked at all the application of this product? But yeah, TikTok is pushing a lot of
Mhm.
products into teachers' classroom.
Yeah, sometimes causing a little bit of data privacy nightmares and concerns as well. So, trying to train teachers on, making sure that what we're using in our classroom is safe for our kids. We want to give our teachers autonomy. They, in most cases, know what's best for students. I think our job at central level, a lot of times, though, is those software products, particularly math and English, that we are using, that we know get results. Making sure all of our students have access to those. To me, it becomes an equity issue. If we're not using the best products we know for students, and somebody's going rogue and using something that's not effective, it does become an equity issue for our students if they don't have the access to the same high level quality curriculum and instruction.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, Jeff. I mean, I think as a district admin, your role is to create that baseline for all campuses that's equitable. And then, those principals and those teachers, of course, they're gonna customize for their own
Hmm.
needs and what they need. But district office has to set a baseline, make sure that it's fair.
So what's the biggest challenge? What are the things that are the hardest? What are the things that really are tough to get off the ground? And maybe there's some there that people wouldn't expect. There's some that people would, oh, I know this is going to be a challenge, but there are some others that are surprisingly a challenge.
Yeah, I think it's time. Teachers are so overwhelmed today. There's just so much coming at them. And I think a lot of times we try to be very understanding of that. That when we're implementing something, giving grace and patience, as Trudy mentioned. It's not going to be perfect the first time. That's why when we talked about that first training, thinking back on when you do training, it's again generational. There are teachers who tell me, "I'm going to need you to sit down with me like 3 more times before I understand this." That's fine. I think really being patient, giving grace, and knowing that it's not going to be perfect in the first year. Especially the larger district you are, the harder that is. I mean, we always say for us, it takes 3 years for 80,000 kids. It takes 3 years for a solid implementation for us to get that word spread for teachers to become comfortable with that. But we don't want to add on and pile on. So if we're putting something in place, we always try to look at what is it that we can take off? Is there something we can take off of those things? And normally when we're putting in software in place, and normally it's been requested by teachers. Normally they see a gap and say, do we have something that would help kids write better? And then going out and exploring that. So I do think that grace piece right now in this time of age where teachers are just so overwhelmed and attacked, quite frankly, that we just give them a level of grace for implementing.
Yeah, and I would say, again, here's a district role to make sure that your initiatives are aligned and that you've thought really carefully about what your priorities are. Like by definition, you can't prioritize everything. So you have to choose like what are our most important things. And that might mean that my pet initiative that I think is the most important takes a back seat for a couple of years. Right. So, and we really do have to be team players and look across big picture as central office and say, what are our biggest priorities here? How can we align? And be really reluctant to pile a whole bunch of new things on teachers at any one given point. Because especially nowadays, it's not like there's a
Mm.
long line to replace them if they decide to walk, right? We really have to support our teachers in their work, their day-to-day, what the day-to-day reality of teacher work is like.
Yeah, I love Trudy too. I think looking at just the last maybe 6 months, I guess, really, because it's kind of related, Patrick. When you're talking about implementing things you know you need to implement that's best for kids, how do you take off? How do you stop doing things that maybe are, one of the things I think that has helped tremendously that we've been working with our teachers on is just how to use AI to leverage day to day practices to make them simple. I've done some heavy work nationally around and AI and particularly with us, our instructional technology teachers, technology specialists are going around to every school training teachers on Magic School AI. It is a huge time saver for teachers. And so when teachers see that, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get all this time back. And you don't realize how much that adds up over a day when you're trying to craft 4 emails to parents, you're trying to write this recommendation letter, you're trying to, AI can do all that for you and to do it quicker. And, I use it every day. So I think too, it's actually embracing that and say to teachers, hey, here is some ways you can actually gain time back and that you can get some time back in your day so that you have time to implement some of these high yield strategies we know can help students achieve the higher results.
I was just going to thank Jeff for bringing that up because the whole idea of using AI can save so much time in a classroom for a teacher. And it doesn't necessarily specifically Magic School AI. I shared this with a group of educators, I guess a bunch of group of educators the last couple of weeks. And they're saying, but our curriculum, we have to stick to our curriculum and we got to make sure that everything's, yeah, that's nice, but it's not about the curriculum in regards to Magic School AI. It's a lot more. It's helping the teachers save time on all the things that they have to do aside from teaching, like the emails or the IET meetings or the, even actually, I shared it with my daughter because she became a science teacher because she had a couple of science degrees and she wanted to do some, I know this is crazy. She wanted to do substitute teaching, but as a way to make extra money. And they said, no, you're going to be in the classroom. So they put her in the classroom. But now she has this program that's helping her create these science labs immediately. And it's one of those things that she remembers her teachers going on and on about creating these labs. And yeah, you put in a couple of words in your science standards and push a button and poof, it's there. So thank you for that mention, Jeff. I think AI is transforming the way that teachers work if we use it in the proper way.
There's also, I'm sure, ways that AI could be used to help evaluate the efficacy of tools. AI could help evaluate the efficacy of the different professional development options that are used, how much they're used, and what the impact of them is. It's a wonderfully yet to be explored thoroughly topic, and I'm so glad that it's come up here. So, I mean, we've talked about a whole bunch of different aspects here, and I can throw out. I'm going to throw out a couple of things that I think kind of summarize this, but I want you guys to make sure that I'm staying honest and we're including all of the things that we kind of talked about. So if I miss something, please make sure to highlight it. I heard an awful lot about professional development that really mirrors good teaching practices, good instructional practices. And that is identify the ends at the beginning. What are we trying to accomplish, and making sure that the user is immersed in it and familiar with how the learning is happening. That it can be personalized, and there should be a variation of opportunities for the different styles, the different kind of tendencies that people have. So it should be personalized. We have to measure things to see if these tools are working, and then adapt the proper support for the teachers. And critical to all of this is some empathy and the understanding that teachers are overloaded. They've got too much on their plate. And in many times, to use Jeff's phrase, they're kind of attacked by society and all the things that are coming at them. So it's very, very important to give them the ongoing support, to measure the efficacy of these tools, and very much to listen to the feedback. What are we hearing? Because you guys are using these things. What else can we do to provide additional support and help for you? Driving that from their perspective is going to be very important. It's a shared process. Understanding what you're trying to get to, giving them the proper tools, and then the support and the listening for them is the right combination. It's the right shared kind of approach. What did I miss there? The thing that strikes me about this conversation, and really because it was almost the end of the conversation before AI came into it, is it's something that we have to refresh and renew and revisit on a very, very regular basis. Because really what we're trying to do is to provide our teachers the tools and the assistance that they need to make the most of the time that they're spending. They're committing their lives to a profession that takes an awful lot of heart and an awful lot of commitment. So we have to find ways to help them. But it's something that has to constantly get refreshed. And the technologies are changing, the new tools are coming out. So we have to keep revisiting that. And I hope we'll get the chance to talk about it again at some time in the near future.
Yeah.
And certainly any other closing thoughts? Does anybody have anything else they want to add to this?
Well, as you were talking, I just remember something that I used to tell my teachers when I was a principal. I said, uh, so now that I am in this office, I'm going to treat you like I want you to treat your students. I want to give you the time that you need to do the things that you do that I would do when I had students in the classroom. I want to make sure that I'm doing all these things, be it being empathetic and giving you the relationship that you need and all these things as a principal that I want you to do for your students. And now that I've moved to the district office, uh, I'm trying to wrap my mind around doing the same thing for schools, that same way, treating them as I want them to treat not only their teachers, but their students. And you are alluding to the whole fact of the hierarchy of the way we work. And it's just it's a little bit difficult when you're in a district office versus when you're in a school, but uh, the same mindset of making sure that they have what you want them to give. You give them the best so that they can give the next group the best so that they can give the students the best. So that's my closing.
I agree with that. It's kind of like that sentence, if you don't feed the teachers, they'll eat the children, right? And when you're at the district level, the same goes for principals and, for serving folks at that campus level, they need support as well. So I really love what you said, Greg, about modeling whatever it is that you're asking people to do. And so if we are expecting them to implement something in a certain way, we need to model that in our professional development and in our coaching and making sure that we're living out whatever it is that we're asking for other people to live out.
It strikes me, and it's sad that it's right at the very end, but I would ask for your thoughts on this as well. And that is, we haven't talked about the parent yet. And I have to think that parents have thoughts and struggles or things that they like about the use of technology. How often does that come back, and is it a struggle for teachers to deal with? And is that something we should be including in the support we're giving them?
Yeah, so I certainly think it is. I think there's a big misconception out there that anytime kids are on a device, it's automatically adding to the whole screen time research. When actually, if you look at the research done on through the pandemic by even the pediatrics associations, that what they find is really dividing that into two categories. If you're just sitting there consuming, then yeah, that's really not the best way to be in front of screen time. But if you're actually using technology to create, then that's a whole different level of engagement for students. It's not that mindless sitting there just absorbing content. So, for us, we try to explain that to our parents that there is a difference between, you have control as a parent on what your child does at home. And quite frankly, most of the activity they're doing at home is the mindless. It's sitting in front of the TV, it's sitting in front of Netflix, it's sitting in front of TikTok and all that kind of stuff. Most of what we're doing in school is actually creating content and a little bit of consumption as well, but more critical thinking around using that technology and creating.
You have been wonderful. I appreciate so much your time and your insight, your wisdom on this topic. I think that everybody that gets the chance to listen will walk away with something, and I certainly your passion goes without mention. So thank you again very much. And thank all of you for listening to this episode of Perspectives Finding Common Ground. Until next time, take care.
Thank you for listening. ClassLink is proud to be the meeting place to facilitate these conversations. If you have a topic idea, send it to perspectives@classlink.com. To keep hearing our perspectives, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify and subscribe to us on YouTube.